I recently made a video going over gym nerd Jeffrey Nibbles' chest exercise tier list. And you guys really seem to enjoy that video, and a lot of you were asking me to do the same thing with Jeffrey Nibbles' back exercise tier list. For those of you who don't know who I am, my name is Rios. I have a Bachelor's of Science in Exercise Science, and in this video I'll be going over Jeffrey Nibbles' back exercise tier list. Before I get started with the video, if you're looking to build an aesthetic physique, be sure to check out my 90-day aesthetic body blueprint. This takes all the guesswork out of achieving your dream physique. But if you're more focused on athletic performance, be sure to check out my 120-day peak athleticism package. Both of these will be in the description.
Renegade rows. These are not good for building muscle. First, they don't provide a good stretch because you'll come up solid against the floor. They don't offer maximum tension to your back because other muscles have to work so hard just to keep your balance, which makes it hard to get a good back pump. Sorry, renegade rows are going in F tier.
So Jeffrey starts off with the renegade row, which isn't a very popular back exercise that you see in the gym. Jeffrey's kind of being an idiot when describing this exercise, but I do agree with him that this isn't the best exercise for back hypertrophy, and I would say it's more of a core exercise. Jeffrey says that this exercise is a combination of a row and a plank, which is sort of true and sort of not true. Although it looks like a plank and row combo, it hits the core differently than a typical plank. When it comes to core stability, there are 4 different kinds: anti-extension, anti-lateral flexion, anti-rotation, and anti-flexion. The plank is an anti-extension core exercise, while the renegade row is an anti-rotation core exercise. Meaning that in the renegade row, in order to maintain a neutral spine, you have to resist rotation. While I wouldn't say the renegade row is a useless exercise, if your goal is to build a bigger back, I wouldn't choose this one. I would say you should use it if you're more focused on building anti-rotation strength. So I'll put this exercise in D tier.
And the same goes for other 2-in-1 combination exercises like the dumbbell row plus curl, or the dumbbell row plus press, or the dumbbell row plus kickback. This is because the smaller muscle in the pair will always be so much weaker than your back, so it'll always give out first. They're all going in F tier.
I agree with Jeffrey here. Combo exercises are so stupid, and I would have to put all of these in F tier as well. Combo exercises are so stupid as the stronger muscle group won't be able to get a good stimulus, as you have to use a much lower load to compensate for the weaker muscle group, so the stronger muscle group won't get a good stimulus because you won't even be able to get close to failure. It's much better just to split the exercises up into 2 different exercises, which they already are, and focus on going close to failure on these 2 separate movements.
What about the deadlift? Well, I am a big fan of the deadlift. I think it's one of the best exercises for building total body strength. However, when we look at the criteria for a S tier back builder, it doesn't score too well. It doesn't stretch your lats or mid-back much at all. It also doesn't take your lats or traps through an active range of motion. So any tension they do receive is isometric. And while they are easy to overload, you can always add some weight or some reps, that's usually because your hamstrings and glutes are getting stronger, not necessarily your back. As a back builder, the deadlift is going in C tier.
I kind of agree with Jeffrey here, and I also kind of disagree with Jeffrey. It is true that you don't get a good back stretch and you hit the back isometrically in a deadlift. But the goal of the deadlift is not to isolate your back. The goal of the deadlift is to hit your entire posterior chain. As much as stupid bodybuilders try and dispute this, hitting muscles other than the target muscle is not a bad thing. Although a ton of these nerd and geeky optimal bodybuilders like to trash on the deadlift, there's a reason why even top bodybuilders like C-Bum consistently deadlift. It's because it's a great exercise to build strength and size in your entire posterior chain. And there's even been research that shows that heavy compound lifts like a deadlift hit the abs just as well as isolation ab work. Although that has nothing to do with the back, I decided to add that in because it just shows how beneficial deadlifts are for total body size. Since the video is about building the back in particular, I would have to put deadlifts in B tier. But if I had to rate the deadlift as a whole, I would have to put it in S tier because I think it has to be one of the best exercises.
And since the above the knee rack pull is basically just a deadlift with less range of motion, it's going in D tier. Except, since it often damages gym equipment, hogs plates, and unless your name is Bro Jeff, feels pretty terrible, I'm gonna go ahead and move it to F tier.
I agree with Jeffrey here. I would have to put rack pulls in F tier as well. Rack pulls are essentially just the top half of a deadlift. And unless you're a competitive powerlifter who really struggles at locking out, I don't see the point of doing this exercise, as the range of motion is complete garbage, and I personally see the rack pull as just an ego lift. Most of the time people rack pull, they use a ton of weight that they can't handle, and it's way more than their deadlift weight. Although the rack pull is more focused on the back than the deadlift, using more of your lower body is not necessarily a bad thing, especially when it comes to the deadlift, when the goal of the movement is to be a compound lift that engages multiple muscle groups. And when it comes to specific back work, there are far better alternatives than the rack pull.
Wide grip pull-up. It offers high tension throughout the range of motion and a deep stretch at the bottom. It feels good, and you should get a nice back pump. However, pull-ups do have a tricky resistance profile. They feel very easy at the bottom and very hard at the top. This makes for not the smoothest feel. That said, they are very good for progression, as you can easily add 1 rep each workout or add some load with a weight belt. They also look cool, and I really respect pull-up strength. Wide grip pull-ups are going in A tier.
I respect Jeffrey for putting pull-ups in A tier, but I would have to put pull-ups in S tier. Pull-ups have to be the best vertical pulling exercise to build your back, and that definitely includes lat pull-downs. As I studied comparing the two, found pull-ups to be similar to the lat pull-down in terms of back hypertrophy, and when you add the core strength that you gain from this exercise as you're forced to stabilize your lower body as well, I think pull-ups have to be one of the best back exercises, and I think it's pretty silly not to put it in S tier.
Neutral grip pull-ups have all the upsides of wide grip pull-ups with slightly more lat emphasis. They're also going in A tier.
Neutral grip pull-ups, A tier for Jeffrey. I think that's a pretty good choice. Some people think I hate neutral grip pull-ups because I said in my C-bum video that they're kind of in between a pull-up and a chin-up. But I actually do like neutral grip pull-ups, and the reason why I said I disliked it in the C-bum video is that for a top 10 exercise video, I wouldn't choose that one because I would pick an exercise that's more focused on back development. The reason why I prefer standard pull-ups over neutral grip pull-ups when it comes to back development is because standard pull-ups hit more back muscles than the neutral grip pull-up, and it has less bicep activation. This study comparing the pronated, supinated, and neutral grip pull-ups concluded that those who want to create more strength in their shoulder girdle with greater emphasis on the back muscles should incorporate more pronated grip pull-ups in their workout routine. You may have noticed that standard pull-ups are much harder to do than neutral grip pull-ups and chin-ups. The reason why they're much harder is that you get less assistance from your biceps and you're forced to use your weaker trap muscles. I can see why Jeffrey put both of these pull-up variations in A tier, but when it comes to pure back development, I do give pull-ups the slight edge, which is why I'm putting neutral grip pull-ups in A tier. You could definitely make the argument that neutral grip pull-ups are just as good as pull-ups when it comes to these exercises as a whole, but when it comes to pure back development, I would say pull-ups are better. But I always say variety is key, and you should use both of these pull-up variations in your workout routine. So I would still recommend you program neutral grip pull-ups into your workout routine occasionally. And if you're an athlete who's more focused on training movements over muscles, you should program this exercise more frequently to master the vertical pulling movement.
Chin-ups with a palms up grip shift some back tension to your biceps, so while they are still a great upper body exercise, I'm putting them in B tier for the back specifically.
This one might be a little harsh, but I'm gonna have to put chin-ups in B tier. And it's not because chin-ups are a bad exercise. I think chin-ups are a fantastic exercise, and I think everyone should program chin-ups into their workout routine. But I personally like to use it as a compound bicep exercise, and I don't like to include it in my back workouts as it puts far more load on the bicep. I still think chin-ups can find a way in your back workout though if you're looking for variety, and it can help lead to complete back development.
Wide grip lat pull downs offer a big stretch on your lats. They provide smooth, even tension throughout the range of motion. They feel great, plus you get to sit down, which is nice and stable, and you get a fantastic combination of both lat and mid-trap activation, and you can easily overload them by increasing the pin weight. The wide grip pull down is our first exercise being awarded to S tier.
Putting this exercise in S tier is absolute crap. How can you put pull-ups in A tier and then put lat pull downs in S tier? I mean, that makes no sense. That's like putting Kobe in S tier and then putting Michael Jordan in A tier. They're very similar, but one version is clearly better than the other one. I literally made an entire video as to why lat pull downs are just a worse version of pull-up. As I stated earlier, a study comparing the two found them to be similarly effective for back hypertrophy. And the study even states that pull-ups are more functional due to higher erector spinae and biceps activation. So when you add the fact that pull-ups are just as good at building the back and have greater core and bicep activation, it's just completely stupid to put lat pull-downs ahead of pull-ups. Like, come on, Jeffrey, use your head. I'm gonna put lat pull-downs in C tier, as if you use lat pull-downs in addition to pull-ups and not as a replacement, they can find a place in a great workout routine. I personally only use pull-ups, but like I said, as long as you're not a stupid bodybuilder who only uses lat pull downs and uses them as a replacement for pull-ups, I won't be too mad at you if you do a couple sets of lat pull downs.
Neutral grip pull downs have all the same upsides of wide grip pull downs, except they emphasize your lats over the mid traps, especially if you think about driving your elbows down. So they're also going in S tier.
Wow, I can't believe you put this exercise in S tier as well. I'm gonna put this exercise in C tier as well for pretty much the same reason why I put the lat pull downs in C tier, as it's essentially just a different version of the lat pull down, and there's not enough differences for me to put it in a different tier. I would say neutral grip pull-ups are far better and should be prioritized over this exercise. So yeah, putting this exercise in S tier is just plain stupid.
Half kneeling one arm lat pull downs are heralded as being oh so optimal online. So let's see how they do. High stretch, check. High tension, check. Good feel, at least for me, check. and they're easy to overload. So while I'm tempted to put them in A tier, I'm gonna be lenient and put them in S tier as well.
Another exercise in S tier, wow. I don't think this exercise is super crazy and I don't think it's good enough to put in S tier, so I'll have to put it in B tier. I think this is a great exercise to focus on getting a good contraction of your back rather than loading it up, which is always good to have in your lifting routine, which is why I was originally in between A and B tier for this exercise. But I don't think this exercise is quite A tier, as I think free weight back exercises should be the bread and butter of your workout routine.
Now, the crossbody lat pull around is a spin on the same movement where you twist your torso by 90 degrees so that you're pulling the cable across your body. This will increase the stretch on your lats even further. However, I find that despite the amazing stretch, a lot of people find the movement a bit awkward, especially at first, so I'm gonna leave these in A tier.
I don't see this exercise too often, but I'll put this exercise in B tier as well. Jeffrey's being weird about the stretch again. I mean, dude, it's not that big of a deal. I'm putting this exercise in B tier as just like the one arm lat pull down, it's a lighter exercise for your back that you can focus on getting a good contraction on. I wouldn't say it's better or worse than the one arm pull down, and how often you should program it comes down to personal preference. This exercise is a great way to hit your back differently, and switching this in and out with the one arm lat pull down will be a great way to switch up your routine.
Barbell row. It stretches your back quite well and it offers high tension. However, because it's not the most stable exercise, that tension will be dispersed to other stabilizing muscles like your calves, glutes, and low back just to keep balance. This isn't a huge deal. Your back will still get hammered and you can still overload this movement from week to week. But I don't think it's the best row variation, and I don't even think it's the best barbell row variation. So the standard barbell row is going in B tier.
Here we go again with an optimal bodybuilder crying about stability again. The fact that this exercise is a little bit more unstable is the reason why I like this exercise so much. Even Arnold Schwartz likes this exercise because he says it's a great way to build your lower back unlike chest supported variations. This exercise has to be one of my favorite horizontal pulling variations. Because Jeffrey didn't mention an underhand barbell row in this video, I'm assuming he's talking about both the standard barbell row as well as the underhand barbell row, so I'd have to put this exercise in S tier as well. Again, variety is key and it's important to use both of these variations in your workout routine for complete back development.
The Yates row is basically just a barbell row with a more upright posture and with looser technique. While the looser form will help you load more weight, it doesn't actually guarantee more tension to your back muscles because of momentum coming from your hips. And the more upright posture actually reduces the stretch on your lats and mid traps. Sorry, Dorian, the Yates row is going in C tier.
I agree with Jeffrey here. I'll have to put the Yates row in C tier as well. The reason why I'm putting the Yates row in C tier is that it's just worse than the barbell row when it comes to back development. As because you have a more upright torso in the Yates row, you won't be hitting your back as much as a barbell row.
Pendlay row is essentially the opposite of the Yates row. Instead of going more upright, you go more bent over. This is good because it places your lats under a higher degree of stretch and tension. It also allows for more consistent progression since your form is tighter. So, assuming you do them with a controlled negative, I think they belong in B tier.
I agree with Jeffrey again here. I'm going to put the pendlay row in B tier. I place the exercise lower than the barbell row as when you put the weights on the ground, you lose tension in your back. But I do think this is a good exercise to add into your workout routine occasionally as you're forced to have a flatter back so you'll hit the back differently.
Deficit pendlay row is a pendlay row where you stand on something like a bumper plate. This allows you to go deeper on the negative, meaning more stretch on your lats. I'm gonna put these in A tier.
Oh my god, here we go again with this stupid stretch bullshit. I've mentioned this in a ton of videos, but stretching a muscle doesn't trigger stretch-mediated hypertrophy, but rather stretching the sarcomeres will. And this point will be different based on the muscle. There isn't any research that compared these crazy super range of motion exercises to standard range of motion exercises. So it's not safe to assume that this pendlay row variation is better than the standard one. So I'm putting this exercise in B tier as well.
The Meadows row. It stretches your back a ton. It absolutely smashes your mid-back with super high tension. And as long as you brace against your knee, you'll be nice and stable. The mid-back pump you'll get from these is unmatched. And as a bonus, you get to work on each side individually. This is definitely a personal favorite and easily belongs in S tier for me.
I have rarely seen this exercise in the gym, so it's pretty crazy to see Jeffrey put this exercise in S tier. This is essentially the same as a wide grip barbell row, except it's unilateral and there's a little bit less of a core demand. I would still prioritize free weight row variations, but I can see you adding this in if you just did some deadlifts earlier on, you want a unilateral row variation, or you're just looking to switch things up. I think this is a decent row exercise, so I'll put it in B tier.
The inverted row is basically an upside down row where you pull your own body instead of pulling some weight. They offer a pretty amazing stretch at the bottom, and I can't lie, they feel pretty great too. If you set it up right, you should feel nice and locked in, and you should be able to feel a strong mind-muscle connection with your back. However, they're getting knocked down for progression. While you can have a training partner load some weight in your lap, this also makes the movement feel really awkward, for me at least. And then without the weight, you're stuck with doing super high reps, which is fine, but it is suboptimal once you go above 30 or 40 reps. So despite some positive aspects, I'm gonna put inverted rows in C tier.
I agree with Jeffrey here. I'll put inverted rows in C tier. I think inverted rows are a decent horizontal pull exercise, and I like how it has a decent core demand, and you become accustomed to using your own body weight. But when it comes to back hypertrophy, I really don't like this exercise because, like Jeffrey said, it's incredibly hard to load up on and it will take you forever to approach failure.
One arm dumbbell rows. They offer a big stretch on your lats at the bottom and they feel nice, smooth, and stable. The main issue is, once your back gets decently strong, you may max out the dumbbell rack at your gym, which usually stops at 100 pounds. So they're getting knocked down slightly for progression, but I'm still gonna put them in A tier.
I personally do this exercise without putting my knee on a bench, but I really like this exercise and I'll put it in A tier. I like this exercise because you're able to do a free weight row variation with a neutral grip, which you're unable to do with a barbell. And since it's a unilateral exercise, it will allow you and your central nervous system to only focus on one side, and it will help you fix any muscular imbalances. I put it slightly below a barbell row as I like to prioritize the barbell row because it's easier to load up the exercise.
The croc row is basically just a dumbbell row with looser form. So you use some leg drive and some momentum on the positive. Now, I'm normally not a fan of loose technique. However, where you're braced against the bench, the momentum here is actually more controlled and consistent than it normally is. I may get some flack for this from the technique junkies, but I'm putting croc rows in A tier.
I think Jeffrey's spamming A tier again, and putting this exercise on the same tier as the one-arm dumbbell row is pretty stupid. When it comes to building muscle, we typically want to reduce momentum and let the target muscle do the work, which is why I would still rank the one-arm dumbbell row higher than the crog row. But I do think it can be smart to add this exercise into your workout routine occasionally, especially if you add in a longer eccentric so you can use the eccentric overload technique to build muscle. I don't quite think this exercise is good enough to be B tier, so I'll put this exercise in C tier.
Freestanding T-bar rows, probably the most epic looking exercise, especially if you look like Ronnie Coleman. But the problem is, I just don't love them. They do give a nice stretch on your lats, and the tension that your back gets will be high. I just find them to be annoying. Balance can be an issue once you get decently strong, and the other end of the bar will often pop up if you don't have a landmine attachment. You can progress on them well by adding reps or load, but they're getting knocked down in the feels good department for me. I'm thinking C tier, but I'll go ahead and put them in B tier for Ronnie.
This may be a little harsh, but I'll put the landmine row in D tier. I just think this exercise is worse than typical free weight row variations as it's a little bit more stable, and you have issues like the plates hitting your chest, which don't allow you to go through a full range of motion. And if you happen to be looking for an exercise that's a little bit more stable than a free weight row, I honestly would just go with a cable row variation instead.
Chest supported rows give you all the positives of the freestanding T-bar row, but with a much more stable and secure feel. Having your chest supported allows you to focus all the tension to your back. These are an absolute staple and should 100% be included in your bodybuilding routine. If you don't have a chest-supported machine, you can do dumbbell Helms rows where you brace your chest against the back of an inclined bench. You can do these as T-bar rows or whatever machine helps you engage your back the best. Either way, chest-supported rows are going in S tier for sure.
Wow, how the fuck is this exercise in S tier? I can't believe this dude just claimed that this exercise should 100% be in your lifting routine. The reason why I don't like chest-supported rows is because since it takes away the core demand of free weight row variations, the exercise won't transfer outside the gym as effectively. And as I mentioned earlier, even Arnold Schwartz doesn't like this exercise because you don't get the low back development that you get from bent over row variations. Jeffrey talked about a whole bunch of different chest-supported row variations, which is pretty stupid to group. I would put the machine chest-supported row in F tier because since it has a fixed range of motion, it makes this exercise so lazy it's unreal. I would then put the T-bar chest-supported row in D tier and a dumbbell / barbell chest-supported row in C tier. You may be wondering why I scored the dumbbell / barbell chest-supported row so high. This is because it requires a decent bit more shoulder stability than the other chest-supported row variations, and it may make sense in your workout routine depending on what exercises came before this one. Let's just say you do an athlete workout or a low body workout, or you just did deadlifts and your low back is fried. Then it may make sense to add this exercise into your workout routine so that your fatigued back doesn't affect your horizontal pulling work. This is why UFC champion Leon Edwards occasionally adds in chest supported rows because he typically does squats or deadlifts prior to his rowing work.
Cable rows are another personal favorite. They may actually be the single best exercise that I know of for feeling a deep stretch on my lats, especially when I lean forward on the negative. They also give me a crazy lat pump, and you can always increase the reps or weight from week to week. these are going in S tier as well.
Oh my god, now this dude is spamming S tier. When did S tier lose all its value? I mean, S tier should be an exclusive club, not a club where everybody gets in. Putting this exercise in S tier is stupid because it's just a worse version of free weight row variation. Because the cable row is obviously done on a cable machine, it's more stable than free weights as the constant pull from the cable enhances the stability of the exercise by resisting upper extremity movements in the horizontal plane. You may be wondering why I love the level of instability in free weights so much. This is because the level of instability of free weights is the most specific to daily activities and sports. This is also why I don't like crazy unstable exercises like Bosu ball exercises for building muscle, power, and strength. So essentially cable rows are just a slightly worse version of free weight row variations, so I put this exercise in C tier. Just like lat pull downs, adding in cable row variations occasionally is not a bad thing as long as it's not a replacement for free weight row variations.
Switching to a wide grip will shift some emphasis to the mid traps, especially if you squeeze your shoulder blades together, but that's not a bad thing if that's what you're trying to target. And wide grip cable rows have all the same benefits of close grip cable rows, so they also belong in S tier.
I agree with Jeffrey here. This is essentially just the same as a standard cable row. You're just emphasizing different muscles. So my logic is staying the same for this exercise. I'm putting this one in C tier.
Rope face pull is a very popular option. It does stretch your mid back well, as long as you pull your shoulder blades apart on the negative, and you should be able to feel a strong mind-muscle connection with your entire mid back. The issue is they're a bit unstable when done the conventional way because the cable is always trying to pull your body forward, and so a lot of that tension is simply lost trying to keep your balance. For this reason, the standard rope face pull is going in B tier.
I actually agree with Jeffrey here. I'm putting face pulls in B tier. The issue with this exercise is that it's hard to load up on as the cable pulls you forward once you go heavy. So it's more of a lighter movement that you can add to your back days. I personally use this exercise on my shoulder days, but it can be used on your back days as well.
If you modify the exercise to do it either lying on the floor or by doing them seated, you eliminate that balancing requirement and you'll be able to overload them with much more tension being applied directly to your back. So I'm gonna go ahead and put both of these variations in A tier.
Oh, now we have one of those stupid adjustments that Jeffrey makes. You will never see me doing one of these variations in the gym. I'm not about to look like an idiot. While this will make it easier for you to load up on the face pull, I don't see the face pull as an exercise to necessarily load up on. A better alternative in my opinion is just to do a row variation where you flare your elbows out more. I would put this exercise in C tier, but I'm gonna add the fact that this exercise makes you look like a complete idiot, so I'm moving it down to D tier.
The cable lat pullover, or the lat prayer, offers a huge stretch on your lats as long as you bend forward on the negative, and you should be able to feel a strong mind-muscle connection with your lats. These are better done for higher reps, so they aren't as easily overloaded as some of the compound exercises we've covered, but you can always add a rep here and there, and the incredible mind-muscle connection and the deep stretch make up for it, in my opinion. And so I'm gonna put cable lat prayers in A tier.
I'm surprised you didn't make a stupid adjustment to this exercise too. This exercise has to be one of my favorite isolation exercises for the back. As nearly all back exercises involve the biceps as well, this one doesn't involve the biceps, so it allows you to hit the back differently. While there are a lot of people who feel this exercise in their triceps, I personally get a great back stimulus from it. I'm in between A and B tier for this exercise. Even though this exercise is an isolation exercise, I'm gonna put it in A tier because I think this exercise is so unique and it's a great back exercise.
Dumbbell lat pullover is the same basic movement, except with the dumbbell, you have much more tension on your lats at the bottom and very little tension at the top. Now, this isn't such a bad thing though, because the stretch is most likely the most anabolic part of the range of motion anyway. So as long as you cut out the very top end of the range of motion, I'd also put these in A tier.
Oh, here we go again with Jeffrey spamming A tier again. It's crazy how he goes, this exercise is great if. It's like if you have to add an if, that means that there's a problem with the exercise. I'm gonna have to put this exercise in D tier, which some of you might find kind of harsh. The reason why I don't like this exercise is because the resistance profile is straight up garbage, and as much as Jeffrey likes to make excuses for it, it heavily impacts the effectiveness of the exercise. The people who love this exercise claim that they get an amazing stretch from it, but I personally find the stretch that you get from a cable pullover to be just as effective. When you combine the fact that the resistance profile of this exercise is absolute crap with the fact that there's a far better alternative, it doesn't quite make C tier for me. So those are all the exercises in the back tier list. So you can see when you compare Jeffrey's tier list to the correct, aka my tier list, there are exercises that we agreed and disagreed on. Be sure to leave your tier list in the comments. And if you haven't watched me react to Jeffrey's chest exercise tier list, be sure to watch that video.